It's May 1999. The UEFA Cup final, Moscow. Hernan Crespo scores in the first minute. Parma win 3-0, thousands of supporters, some of them who had spent their annual holiday money on the flight, are watching their club lift a European trophy in Russia. 4 years later, the man who paid for all of it was sitting in a conference room in New York, trying to explain where 3 billion euros had gone. He couldn't explain it, because the 3 billion euros didn't exist. His name was Calisto Tanzi. He built Parmalat, one of the largest food companies in Europe, and for a decade he used it to fund a football club that could compete with anyone on the continent. In December 2003, Bank of America confirmed that a 3.9 billion euros account in his company's records was a forgery. The account had never existed. In Parma, nobody knew yet. They were about to find out. Parma is a city of 180,000 people. Its identity is its cheese, its ham, the opera composer born 20 miles away. Before 1990, its football club had never played a season in SerieA. Nevio Scala changed that. Within 3 years of their first top-flight campaign, Parma were winning European trophies. Cup Winners' Cup at Wembley in 1993, beating Royal Antwerp 3-1, while Faustino Asprilla watched from the bench with an injury, having scored the goals that got them there. UEFA Cup in 1995, beating Juventus home and away. Dino Baggio scored both goals in that final. In 1997, under Carlo Ancelotti, they finished second in Serie A by 2 points. Then, 1999, Coppa Italia, UEFA Cup, Supercoppa. And think about who was on that pitch. Buffon, Cannavaro, Thuram, Crespo, who just scored in Moscow. The best squad the club has ever assembled. For 1 decade, Parma was proof that a city this size, with that company behind it, could compete with anyone in Europe. The people who lived through it understood exactly how unlikely it was, which is part of why they held onto it so tightly. The logo on the shirt was Parmalat. The money that made it possible came from Calisto Tanzi. The city did not separate those things. There was no reason to. If you're new here, this is what we do. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Gianluigi Buffon leaves for Juventus. 52.88 million euros, the highest fee ever paid for a goalkeeper. Lilian Thuram goes north a few weeks later. The previous summer, Hernan Crespo was sold to Lazio for a world record fee. Fabio Cannavaro would follow in 2002. Every supporter watching this thought, that's football, selling clubs sell, it happens. Calisto Tanzi had been falsifying Parmalat's accounts for 11 years by that point. The fraud started in 1990s, the year Parmalat went public. When specific divisions began losing money, the numbers were adjusted. As the gap grew, the mechanism became more elaborate. A network of offshore shell companies in the Cayman Islands, subsidiaries that booked fictitious revenues, transactions on paper between entities that existed only on paper. Italian law required companies to change auditors every 9 years. In 1999, Parmalat moved from Grant Thornton to Deloitte. Grant Thornton, reluctant to lose the client, helped Parmalat spin off its travel business and other subsidiaries, which then stayed under Grant Thornton's watch, continuing to generate the false transactions that fed back up into the parent company. Deloitte saw the cleaned-up surface. Grant Thornton managed the mechanism beneath. The Cayman Islands subsidiary, Parmalat, once filed accounts claiming it had sold enough powdered milk to Cuba in a single year to produce 55 gallons for every person on the island. Nobody questioned it. By 2001, the hidden debt was already enormous. The cash raised by selling Crespo and Buffon and Thuram and Cannavaro bought the fraud more time to run. Whether those sales were a deliberate act of financial triage or decisions made in a state of escalating denial, the men authorizing them knew the accounts were false. The money wasn't going into building a replacement squad. It was going into the gap. By late 2003, the gap was 14 billion euros. In February 2003, Tanzi's own CFO, Fausto Tona, announced a surprise 300 million euros bond issue without telling anyone, including Tanzi himself. The markets noticed. Tanzi fired Tona and brought in a replacement named Alberto Ferraris. Ferraris almost immediately found he couldn't access parts of the company's own books. He began to suspect the real debt was more than double what appeared on the balance sheet. He resigned, His successor couldn't access cash to make basic bond payments. He also resigned. December 19, 2003. Parmalat misses a bond repayment of 150 million euros. Investigators trace the money to a Bank of America account in the Cayman Islands. Parmalat's records say this account holds 3.95 billion euros. Bank of America is contacted. Their response is immediate. The document Parmalat submitted is a forgery. Tana had scanned a sheet of Bank of America letterhead, filled in the account details, and run the fabricated confirmation through a fax machine several times to give it the look of a genuine document. The account had never existed. The story breaks in the Italian financial press on December 20th. By December 22nd, it is the front page of every major newspaper in the country. Calisto Tanzi flies to Milan on December 27th and meets with investigators. He begins to talk. He admits diverting at least 500 million euros into family ventures, including a tour operator built for his daughter, and a failed attempt to buy a television network. One Citibank account used as a vehicle for fraudulent bonds had been named Bucanero, black hole in Italian. On December 29th, he is arrested at Linate Airport. He is 65. Parmalat enters administration in January 2004. 3 months later, the football club follows. The administrators arrive to find a squad stripped of its best players over 4 years. A 167 million euros net loss for 2003, and a city trying to hold something that has already come apart. When a number reaches 14 billion euros, it stops meaning anything specific. So it helps to come back to the size of a single life. Parmalat employed 36,000 people worldwide when it collapsed, thousands of them in and around Parma itself. Many had also been sold Parmalat bonds by their own financial advisors and had been told this was the responsible choice for money saved over decades. An accountant who put 40,000 euros of her parents' savings into Parmalat bonds because she was told it was the safe option. By Christmas 2003, those bonds were worth nothing. The football club continued for years after the fraud. New owners, cycling managers. The squad sold and sold again. The European nights replaced by mid-table campaigns and then relegation battles. In 2008, after 18 consecutive years in Serie A, Parma went down to Serie B. They came back. They slid again. And in the 2014-15 season, what happened at Parma Calcio was simply without precedent for a professional football club. By August 2014, the club had stopped paying wages. A home match against Udinese in February 2015 was canceled because there was no money to pay the police and stewards to provide matchday security. The team bus had been seized by bailiffs. The captain, Alessandro Lucarelli, 37 years old and 7 years at the club, described their plan for the next away match at Genoa. If they couldn't get a bus, he said, they'd put 5 or 6 cars together and drive themselves. They'd pay out of their own pockets. Hernan Crespo, the man who had scored in the first minute of the 1999 UEFA Cup final, was now coaching Parma's youth team. He told a television interviewer his players were taking cold showers after training because the electricity bill hadn't been paid. Inter Milan lent them a bus so the youth side could travel to a tournament. In March 2015, the club's newest owner, bought for €1 2 months earlier, was arrested for money laundering. He was the third owner in 4 months. On March 19th, a bankruptcy court declared Parma Calcio insolvent. Total liabilities, €218 million, including €63 million in unpaid wages. The administrators put the trophies up for auction, all 8 of them. The Coppa Italias, the UEFA Cups. The Cup Winners' Cup from Wembley. The objects that had been the point of the whole decade listed in a bankruptcy inventory. It took the court 10 minutes. Parma Calcio 1913 was refounded in July 2015. The name reached deliberately past the bankrupt entity to 1913, to the year the club first existed. A group of local businessmen put the money together. Fans could buy shares at €500 each. 25% of the new club was made available to supporters. Nevio Scala, the manager who had taken Parma to their first Serie A promotion in 1990 and won the first Coppa Italia in 1992, came back as club president. They were placed in Serie D. That first season, Parma sold over 9,000 season tickets, a new record for the entire division, more than they had sold in their final season of Serie A. Alessandro Lucarelli was the only first-team player who stayed. He had offered to play in Serie D before the bankruptcy was even declared. 7 years at the club, and he wasn't leaving. He played every promotion season that followed, over 30 games in each. 3 consecutive promotions. Serie D to Lega Pro to Serie B to Serie A. The first club in Italian football history to win 3 in a row. He was 40 years old when they walked out in the top flight again. Parma are in Serie A now. The badge is the same. The stadium is the same. Calisto Tanzi died in January 2022 in Parma, having served most of his sentence under house arrest. He was 83. The employees who lost their savings in 2003 didn't get them back. The trophies were auctioned. The supporters still come to the Tardini. Some of them were in Moscow in 1999. Some drove themselves to away games in 2015. What it means that they keep showing up? The story doesn't answer that. Maybe the real story was never about Tanzi. The fraud is what happened to him. The real story is what happened to everyone else. The people who loved this club before his money arrived, who lost their savings when it collapsed, who drove themselves to away games in 2015, who bought shares at €500 to own a piece of what came next. He broke their trust completely. They rebuilt the dream without him. That's the part that outlasts everything. Every empire has a story. Every story has a price. The question is, who's paying attention?